The government has reportedly pulled all episodes of South Park.
Parker and Matt Stone, the two guys behind South Park, it is or could be a matter of life and death.
The creators of South Park are being threatened with possible assassination.
Underestimate the passion and the protectiveness of suburban Christian moms. This will start a war in this country.
I'm going to ask you a question. Are you one of those types of boring intellectuals that never shuts up about how Dr. Strangelove by Stanley Kubrick is the best comedy of all time, and yet is the type of person who also will never laugh at any movie ever? Just they kind of smirk. You know, that smug, smart smirk?
Me a smirk.
If you are that type of person, I just want to let you know that you're sick, and I think a good medicine for that would be to watch this movie. This movie is just a lot like kind of a candy-colored fart, and if you were to breathe this fart, it's going to help you loosen up a little bit. So these dinguses, these guys, they got $20 million to make a movie for the South Park franchise. And what they did with it, just take a fat on the shoes of all the TV censors.
There's stuff and there's, all these things, and it's like you get halfway through and you're like, wow, there's been like 45 minutes worth of stuff, and then another 45 minutes of stuff is still coming. And I think that came from our lives, because we definitely had stuff happen to us.
I just want to say is South Park did more to unite the false punks that live in those gentrified parts of the neighborhood and the lower class than probably anything else. I think it's kind of poetic that the $30 vintage South Park tees that they sell at those like expensive thrifty boutiques, that those shirts were also once worn 20 years ago by probably a 12-year-old child growing up in a poor household. So when I was a kid, I think you could almost sort of tell which child had neglectful parents, like when you're in middle elementary school, 3rd, 4th grade, by whether or not your parents let them watch South Park. You really kind of wonder what guys are thinking when they bend over and you see these South Park boxers. You just have to assume if there's like South Park boxers that their ass is unwashed.
Ew.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's not, those boxers, there's not a single good smelling pair of South Park boxers that exist. I had this thought. So South Park connects the two smoking population, right? The lower working class and then the upper class bougie nihilist. You can't really say that there were really any other shows that were able to fuel as much extremism from like uptight type moms as South Park. Of course there's always something worse out there that aired for like 6 episodes and late night on MTV2. But those shows have been about as impactful on American culture as like Coney 2012 had on Ugandan war crimes. But Trey Parker and Matt Stone is they're vintage trolls. They're the type of people who sneak into like expensive fancy pants restaurants and run to the bathroom, scratch like a bad picture of boobies on the inside of the stall. And the reason I say that is because picture in your mind now that bougie, probably a walks into the bathroom to take a golden fancy guy, face is like red, probably from alcoholism and fake tan, and the bathroom looks like it was decorated by Starbucks, all dark. And now imagine that guy's reaction to when they sit down and they look at the stall wall and they see this work of art. If you look deep in the heart of what's going on, there's this experience of invasion of personal space. Invasion of privacy. It's being exposed to the type of person that would do that. You don't want to see a rich douche feel that way.
I just can't stop thinking about the golden that you mentioned earlier.
Why? The rich guy. Rich guys take golden. You know what it's gonna smell like? You know what a golden smells like? Golden smells like the broken backs of the lower class. People should do that more. Piss off rich people by vandalism and other criminal activities. I'm advocating that right now. That cracks. trying to articulate a real argument to try to describe like why the powers that be are evil and what they're doing wrong, is that's boring as hell. Like, it was probably, mid 1800s when everything that could have been said has already been said.
Government can't run anything effectively, and to think that they can run healthcare is smoking the funny stuff.
South Park, with the route they took, is in the face of the FCC and the MPAA, is they just cussed a lot in front of them, in front of the people who hated it the most. Sophistication's just like the enemy of the working class, dude. And speaking of the working class, not that making money is a bad thing, okay? But I've always been a little bit curious if the nihilists that have grown up and become rich are as insufferable as I imagine them to be. And just judging from the way Trey Parker's face looks, it isn't looking good. But of course, you could always sense that them working with the FCC was a little bit like having a battle axe of a mother. When they finally got a movie deal, and they kind of graduated to the MPAA standard, and finally got permission to say things like, you know how many explicatives can be used in a movie before it gets an NC-17 rating? 400. And do you know how many this movie has? 399. And so they went in and made a movie about the South Park kids sneaking into a movie called Terrence and Philip's Asses of Fire, which is, in the movies universe, an explicit and rated R movie.
But why? Because this movie has naughty language. Next, please.
And so the suburban crowd kind of responds by committing genocide against Canadians. And World War III happens. And Stan has a side arc where he is learning about what the is. Really disappointed that didn't make it in as the main plot of this movie. Now, I just want to dare to say that even though South Park looks like the person who designed it was asked to use the safety scissors, South Park is a beautiful show. You could be one of the dweebs that talks about how long it would have took, or whether or not a 4-year-old could have done it or not. But like other great primitive artists, the South Park design is very intentional. Okay, look at something like Grandma Moses or Florinel Stettheimer. Come on, work with me. You see the similarity. There's more to it than just another one of those artists recreating some like kid craft or something and putting it on Pinterest. You can sort of see that what their intention is to open your eyes to the little nymph that lives inside of like the neighborhood, the rural neighborhood, right? It's a nostalgic nymph that will like keep you in sync with the sun or something, right?
Take the baby.
Look, I can prove it, because look at the way South Park frames this town of Colorado. And Trey Parker has incorporated this community into at least 2 major projects of his. South Park obviously being one of them, and then the other one is critically underseen, Cannibal the Musical, which apparently I guess is like supposed to be based on true events in Colorado history.
What are you guys doing?
It's about a representation of ignored and forgotten people or something, okay? Oh, so I might have been the last person to have known this, but I didn't realize before watching this that this was like a daggone musical. I shouldn't be surprised now that it's common knowledge that he's big into musical theater, now that the Book of Mormon has kind of been something that has been getting Idiocracy fans something to gnaw on. But look, so I'm not sure if this makes musicals cooler or if it makes Trey Parker nerdier.
525,600 minutes, 525,000 moments of...
But I think that the fact that I'm so upset that freaking Tarzan won the best original song the year this came out over any of the ropping show tunes this movie put out proves that I am compelled to support his musical endeavors.
And the Oscar goes to... The Oscar goes to Phil Collins for You'll Be in My Heart.
But when they're dishing out slaps, like... And I don't know if this is like technically a show tune, but the Intro to Hell, sung by James Hetfield. Terrence and Phillip. These dingus-looking guys are officially my new favorite Canadians. Sorry, Dan Aykroyd. Other than the fact that at pure face value, they just looking at them has this jarring and comedic effect. They are also about as raw as it gets for being crudely simple and immature. And I can't exactly put my finger on it, but I firmly believe that they took the ingredients that kind of somehow make up immaturity and they formed it into just something that is somehow clever. Because it would only be by some kind of magic that their appearance and dialogue works the way that it does.
What's garbage?
Well, what do you expect? They're Canadian.
But beyond that, it occurred to me while watching this movie that there is a perfect analogy between our real world society and the South Park universe, and South Park's universe and its relationship to their hit comedy series, Terrence and Phillip.
Children.
But of course children are gonna see it.
Can I finish? The fact is that we Canadians are quite surprised by your outrage.
You just don't care.
Can I finish? Hello, can I finish?
And once you see that, it's really not that hard to sort of imagine that this movie uses Terrence and Phillip as like kind of like an effigy for Trey and Matt. They make a movie and the kids love it, parents hate it.
Anyone wearing a Terrence and Phillip shirt is to be sent home immediately.
And eventually find themselves set up for a public execution at a USO charity show. So as they tell the story, they really unload on our impressionability as humans.
Don't you like Terrence and Phillip anymore?
Of course not. My Bobby says I hate Canadians now because they made me have a dirty mouth.
And how much responsibility do we take upon our own behavior?
I'm sorry, I can't help myself. That movie has warped my fragile little mind.
And the hypocrisy that has just soaked this entire discussion.
Today is a great day for democracy.
And I'll tell you, Kyle's mom is the most frightening villain, and this is a movie that involves Saddam Hussein and Satan. So she being kind of like the main representation of Trey and Matt's real-life antagonist, she lays full responsibility of the children's behavior on the Terrence and Phillips movie, but also all on Canada. There's something intrinsic to Canada that is corrupting and ultimately instigates what is like a new Nazi regime on Canadians. And through the story arc, her character crosses over from being just a funny parody to being like conventionally evil. Like, I'm not kidding, it almost stopped being a comedy for just a few seconds. At the climax, the piano starts playing, and her son Kyle is pleading with her to come back, be a mother, please. She is so hung up on her bloodthirsty agenda to blow the brains out of Terrence and Phillip for cussing in those damn movies they made, that she ignores her own son's plea. The movie, despite all the anger that is seeping through, does have an inviting appeal to it. Like, there's a certain quality to the humor that I feel like can both lampoon something and it still not feel super aggressive, at least looking at the general context of the entire franchise, right? Like, there's a difference between the feeling you might get watching George Carlin or listening to George Carlin, where you just sort of get this dark, yucky, misanthropic feeling, even though you're laughing, kind of a thing. Something that they tend to do a lot, and is something that I think gives the whole franchise the bulk of its value, really, is parody things in a way that has this power to, like, connect synapses in our brain, or whatever you call it. And what I mean by this is that we're just surrounded by these little bandwagons all the time. And a lot of us find ourselves, and this is me, of course, included, are annoyed at these bandwagons. And we may not even actually completely know why. South Park has this supernatural ability to pick up on these things, and magnifying the absurdity of it all to such overblown proportions that it finally becomes noticeable to like our untrained eye. So I think what I'm trying to say is that South Park has like this crazy rhetorical power to it. Even if you want to take sides with whatever it is that they are lampooning, it makes you realize how silly we all tend to look when we're trying to figure out our own ideology. The thing I probably appreciated the most in this movie is all the non sequitur. A conclusion or statement that does not logically follow from the previous argument or statement. Okay, and I know I'm going to sound like such a right now, okay, but it reminds me of the Dadaist movement. Okay, a lot of Dadaists back in the day, they believed that the reason and the logic of bourgeois capitalist society led people into a war, and they expressed their rejection of that ideology and artistic expression that appeared to reject logic and embrace chaos and irrationality. Alright, so do I need to go all that way, okay, on South Park? No, okay, but you can kind of just see these like little, some heritage of depth, of real political, real spiritual, emotional force, right? So, Satan and Saddam Hussein. Why do you have to have his actual photo? They had several known people getting depicted in this movie with the traditional South Park style, you know? But they chose to use an actual image of his head and his voice. And he's Satan's lover, but has a story arc of their toxic relationship where Saddam is the toxic one and that Satan is the neglected partner. Like, there isn't a logical reason as to why these things in conjunction with each other should be funny, but they put them together and it's just the funniest part of the movie. They could do anything and I would love it.
That's it! I have had enough of you!
They, you know, and they kind of put these little out of place flourishes like this throughout the whole movie. You know, you get lines like these.
Come on, Geg. We gotta see the Terrence and Phillip movie, too. I hate you, Kenny.
Or the whole "What would Brian Boitano do" song number.
Boitano do if he was here right now.
That goes on for 3 minutes with no relation to anything in the movie at all. Or my personal favorite thing is the way extreme scenarios kind of just get punctuated with a perfectly timed reaction from a character, and it's just funny every single time. Alright, so would you be shocked if I told you that even some of the cool young kids that are cool with vulgarity and crude jokes still thought that South Park have gone too far? That's right. Some people find South Park problematic, and I have no idea where the confusion is coming from. Me talking about this is kind of making me an honorary first lieutenant of the thought police. While it's easy to be the primary demographic of South Park, being white males with acne problems who are a little bit nihilistic, to just watch this and to just laugh at all the jokes about other people who just aren't you. The thing is, if you watch South Park long enough, you're gonna find them parodying something and maybe even seemingly mocking something that you actually care a lot about. And if that has happened to you, then you probably experienced a tension about whether or not you really thought that the jokes were funny or not to you, and how it feels for them to be taking lightly something that you really care about. And granted, some people are confident studs that can laugh alongside people and respect their disagreement without feeling truly threatened, and God bless them, okay? But we aren't all that way, and I don't really think it's a good idea to expect anyone to be that way. So the way I see it, there's a couple ways to look at this, okay? One, South Park is communicating that caring about things is indeed weakness. You need to be able to laugh at yourself and everyone around you and to never really truly choose a side. And, that not exactly the most welcoming message to somebody who is someday looking forward to affecting a change, okay? Or you might be a person that can kind of see the diverse or extra subtle layers that's woven into their parodying, And you might, if you're that type of person, kind of think of those latter jokes that I just mentioned are actually meant to put you off, intended to sort of show you an ugly thing in the form of a joke as sort of an indicator that this thing actually exists in our world. Okay? I mean, are you following? And the stark truth and comedy coming together is sort of this off-kiltered way of surprising you and making you consider it. I mean, for me, at least in terms of this movie, I found that it was uncharacteristically straightforward, okay? And its messaging, making it pretty clear what they are trying to say. And they make efforts to point out dark realities about our world in ways that were sobering and hilarious at the same time. For example, the whole Operation Human Shield bit.
Holy mother of Jehoshaphat!
Fire on my command.
All right, squad. Just like I told you. 1, 2...
You some people gonna die?
3! What the
Or even the fact that they picked Canadians to be depicted as subhuman to Americans. And our whole nation kind of binds together in fellow hatred of an entire nationality. The joke is that the Canadians are the least threatening people group towards Americans. And the fact that Americans declare them as subhuman and that they're depicted, in the show as almost an entirely different species is a joke, in my opinion, on American nationalism. And so I guess to me that makes me more inclined to see the place they're coming from as more positive than negative when I'm in doubt, I guess. But for me, I'm just so obsessed with this type of angst being put out by such a well-known franchise that I am hard-pressed to not back them up.
Who's making a potato?